Successor Dallin H. Oaks stood before the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and spoke with a trembling voice as he paid tribute to President Russell M. Nelson, who passed away at the age of 101. His words carried the weight of both grief and hope. Millions of members across the world listened as the 93-year-old leader reflected on the life, the service, and the love of the man he had served beside for more than 4 decades. President Nelson's death was not unexpected given his age. Yet it still struck deeply at the heart of the global church. He had been more than a prophet. He had been a healer, a teacher, and a man who worked tirelessly until the very end of his long life. He had guided the church through dramatic changes and through some of the most difficult challenges of the modern era. In his tribute, President Oaks reminded the members that he and President Nelson had been called as apostles on the same day in April of 1984. Oaks, a judge and legal scholar, and Nelson, a heart surgeon, came from different backgrounds, but their paths became one as they were sustained into lifelong service. Oaks spoke of that day with emotion, calling it the beginning of a shared journey that lasted more than 40 years. He said he had walked beside a prophet, but he had also walked beside a brother. President Oaks described Nelson as a man of unmatched energy. At an age when most people could barely walk without support, Nelson was flying across continents, dedicating temples, and meeting with members face to face. Oaks said that time itself seemed to bend to Nelson's determination. Even at 100 years old, he was planning new initiatives, offering new revelations, and showing the world that the Lord sustains his prophet. Oaks said simply that no one would ever forget the strength of President Nelson's service. The tribute was not just about leadership, but about love. Oaks said that Nelson had the gift of making people feel seen. A child in Africa, a missionary far from home, or a member of the Quorum of the 12 all felt his personal attention. He remembered countless private moments when Nelson wrote notes, gave encouragement, or quietly visited those in need. Those acts of kindness, Oaks said, were the true mark of his ministry. President Oaks also spoke about the courage of change. Nelson's presidency will be remembered as one of boldness. He adjusted long-standing policies, built hundreds of temples, and emphasized the full name of the church. He guided members during the COVID pandemic and reminded them to trust in revelation. Oaks said that Nelson never feared change when it came from the Lord. For him, revelation was living and ongoing, and he showed the church that God still speaks. The new leader reminded the members that succession in the church is not like the election of a pope or president. It is based on seniority, and it has followed the same pattern since the death of Joseph Smith. Oaks said that the Lord's work does not pause. The keys of the priesthood remain, revelation continues, and leadership moves forward in order. His words reassured those who worried about what might come next. Oaks also reflected on Nelson as a family man and a friend. He spoke of his warmth, his laughter, and his constant optimism. Even in private meetings, Nelson carried a spirit of joy. He believed in people, he believed in progress, and he believed that the love of God could change the world. The tribute also carried honesty. Oaks has often been seen as a stern voice, especially on sensitive issues related to LGBTQ matters and religious freedom. But in this moment, he softened his tone. He said that Nelson showed the way to defend doctrine while showing compassion. Truth and love, he said, were not opposites. They belonged together, and Nelson had lived that balance. President Nelson's passing also reminded members of the sacrifices Oaks himself made. He gave up a possible career on the United States Supreme Court to serve in the highest callings of his faith. He served as president of Brigham Young University, then as a justice on the Utah Supreme Court, before he entered full-time apostolic service. Like Nelson, he left behind worldly honors for a higher duty. During his tribute, Oaks emphasized continuity. The work of the church is not tied to one man. The prophets are called, they serve, and they return to God. But the church continues. He promised that Nelson's example would guide him as he now carries the mantle. He said the Lord would not leave his people alone. The emotion of the moment reached beyond Salt Lake City. In South America, in Africa, in Asia, members listened as the words of Oaks were translated into their languages. Many wept openly. In the Philippines, one member wrote that although the loss felt heavy, Oaks's words brought peace. In Brazil, another wrote that it was comforting to see that prophets also cry, also love, and also carry one another. The funeral for President Nelson has not yet been announced, but the sense of mourning is already global. Tributes pour in daily. Leaders from other faiths have acknowledged Nelson's legacy of compassion and his emphasis on family. Scholars have praised his courage to make difficult changes even late in life. Members remember the personal moments of kindness that no newspaper could ever fully record. President Oaks said that Nelson taught him that service to God does not retire. He said that even in old age, the prophet believed in building, in improving, and in lifting others. That example, he said, would remain with the church forever. Oaks ended his tribute with a promise. He said he would not lead as Nelson, but he would serve the same God who called Nelson. He asked members to follow that same path of faith and dedication. He said that though President Nelson's voice is silent now, the heavens remain open, and revelation will continue. As the world prepares for the next General Conference, just days away, all eyes will turn to President Oaks. He will choose new counselors. He will announce a new apostle. But his first act as prophet was not an announcement of change. It was an act of love and honor. It was a tribute to the man who walked before him and showed the way. President Nelson's life stretched more than a century, and his impact will stretch far longer. He was a surgeon who healed hearts, a prophet who guided millions, and a man who lived every day with purpose. His successor, President Dallin H. Oaks, now carries the responsibility. His words, filled with emotion, made it clear that Nelson's legacy will not fade. It will guide the church into the future. The passing of a prophet is always a solemn moment for the Latter-day Saints. It is a reminder that life is temporary, but the work of God is eternal. Oaks's tribute carried that message clearly. The church mourns, but it also moves forward in faith. The grief is real, but so is the hope. The story of Nelson and Oaks is also the story of two men who left behind worldly paths for a higher call. A surgeon and a judge, both giving their lives to the service of God, both walking together for more than 40 years. Now one has gone home and the other carries the torch. It is a moment of deep loss, but also a moment of continuity. Millions of members across the globe will remember where they were when they heard of President Nelson's death. And they will also remember the words of President Oaks, who promised that the Lord's hand is still guiding his church. His tribute was filled with reverence, grief, gratitude, and assurance. It was the kind of moment that binds a faith together across nations and languages. The church now turns the page, but it does so with memory in its heart. President Nelson will be remembered as a prophet of change, of energy, and of compassion. President Oaks will be remembered for the way he honored that legacy in his first words as leader. Together, their story is one of dedication that transcends time. As the days move forward, and as new announcements come, members will hold to those final words. The work is the Lord's, the prophets are his servants. And though President Nelson is gone, his influence remains. In the voice of his successor, in the faith of millions, and in the unbroken line of leadership that has carried the church since its beginning, his legacy lives on.